Good afternoon. I'm Professor Margot Woodward-Barnett, and on behalf of the Center for Teaching and Learning, I would like to welcome you to our presentation on African American males and the completion agenda. Like many of you working on behalf of underserved and at-risk students, I have been asking the question, how can we graduate more African American males from college? We have an exciting opportunity this afternoon to access valuable, relevant information and guidance as we seek to address this concern. Our speakers, Dr. Elisa Gardenhire and Mr. Kendrick Roundtree of Rattleless LLC will share their research and knowledge in order to provide us with a framework for our discussion of African American males and the completion agenda at Montgomery College. Let me tell you a little bit about their background. Dr. Elisa D. Gardenhire earned her doctorate in urban planning from Harvard University in 2000. Her research aims to reveal the realities of living in poverty. Qualitative methods, she believes, allows persons affected by various social conditions to speak to power directly through stories and real-life experiences. It is stories that people remember long after statistics are forgotten. Students, program participants, and other underrepresented and disadvantaged persons are, she believes, the best sources for solutions to the social problems they face. Her social policy research work includes research and writing on secondary and post-secondary education and minority male student engagement and employment programs in public housing, drug treatment facility, prisoner reentry, and disabled youth. Recently, Dr. Gardenhire joined the Community College Survey of Student Engagement National Advisory Board on improving outcomes for men of color in community colleges. Mr. Kendrick T. Roundtree earned his master's in human services with a concentration in organizational management and leadership from Springfield College. He has been a tireless advocate for underrepresented youth for over 20 years, beginning as a community organizer in Hartford, Connecticut. He continued to work in this field of human and youth services in a variety of agencies before establishing the First Step Foundation, LLC, in 2008. He also currently holds the position of coordinator of mentoring programs at Manchester Community College and teaches as an adjunct faculty at both Springfield College and Goodwin College in East Hartford, Connecticut. He developed a passion for youth development in part due to his own experiences as a youth in the foster care systems of New Jersey and Connecticut from the age of 3 until aging out of the system and entering college. Mr. Roundtree has experienced directly many challenges faced by young men Rattleless aims to serve, including the navigation of higher education without the traditional familial supports. He ultimately graduated and earned his Bachelor's of Science in Human Services and his Master's of Human Services from Springfield College. Let's give Dr. Gardenhire and Mr. Roundtree a warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Woodward-Barnett. We are very excited to be here with you all to talk to you about the National College Completion Agenda and African American men, in particular considering the community college context. In planning this event with the Center for Teaching and Learning, we developed 4 primary learning objectives for you all today, to share with you all today. We want to learn from you as much as we hope you learn from us, actually. The first objective is to just give you an overview of the National Completion Agenda, who the players are, what the origins of it are, what's happening in it now. To discuss, secondly, the role community colleges play in contributing to the national completion benchmarks that have been set by both the federal government and leading educational foundations. To discuss the role Black male students play in the contribution community colleges will make to the National Completion Agenda benchmarks. And then lastly, to discuss Black male student engagement strategies and approaches that we found ourselves in the literature to be successful. I think lastly, we would perhaps provide a small critique of standard approaches as well that may additionally help you overcome whatever challenges you may face in engaging this student population. So we'll start with learning objective 1. I absolutely can hold on one second. So I'll just fill time. Hi. I actually come from a community college family myself. My father was a professor at Laney College in Oakland, California. He started the year before I was born, so my entire life I was immersed in community college life and know how important and critical it really is in terms of changing students' lives, changing students like these that we're talking about, but changing students across the board, how the open access and the true caring that faculty bring to the classroom, staff bring in their engagement with students who may have no other options for college, what that provides. Now, it used to annoy me that students would call him up during dinner time. It seems like, oh, he's calling at dinner. He was like, but I from a very early age was on that campus with him as a kid and came through the ranks, up through the ranks, although I wouldn't attend there because my dad taught there. No way, I'm going. But I understand the importance of community colleges myself. So we have a video that we want to share with you from our president. And I think it's important enough to pause, but I will again fill some time and say, can you guys share with me the reasons that you thought this presentation was interesting? What brought you here today? I know you're getting credit for coming. But other than that, are things interesting to you about this idea about serving men of color on your campus? Do you have concerns about how to do so effectively? Feel free to share. Go ahead.
I think many of us share concerns about the lack of success we see in a lot of these students. Mm-hmm. And we want to find out ways of working with them to help them achieve so that they can be completers.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think this is going to come up later in some of the questions we have, but what kind of things have you seen that stand in the way of their success? What are you seeing? Go ahead.
I don't know if this is a barrier to their success once they get here necessarily, but one of the things that attracted me to this discussion, I'm one of the first touch people that students meet when they are learning about Montgomery College.
What's your role?
I'm one of the college recruiters.
Okay.
And one of the things that discourages me with this population is that they seem to often be labeled before they even get here. Like I was just telling my colleague Kim here that, one of the things that we may do is that we could host a group of students that come from a neighborhood high school to come and visit the college. And this one particular day, I guess this is the thing that really sticks out in my mind, is that there was a group of students that was coming that was a special ed class from a neighboring high school, and the entire group was Black men. 44 students, not one non-Black student, not one female student. They were all Black men. And we see it time and time again when students come.
Yeah.
And I don't know the area here. We came from Connecticut and New Jersey, so we're not from Maryland. But that doesn't represent your population, I'm assuming, of high school students. No. Okay. Are you in communication with the high schools? Do you talk to them about these kinds of concerns?
I mean, we see that often if we're going to go and visit a class of special ed students, that it would be disproportionately made up of Black men.
Yeah, the issue, although we certainly are of a mind of we take them where they are, you all take them wherever they are when they come, the issue certainly starts further back. Yeah, it starts much further back. Absolutely. So I don't know how to apologize for this technical issue.
Our work is so powerful, it is overwhelming the personal computer. While we get that sort of straightened out, I will introduce myself again, Kendrick Roundtree, Principal and Director of Programming and Communication for Rattlers. Similar to Dr. Gardenhire's story, I am a community college graduate. I graduated in from Capital Community College in Hartford, Connecticut. What we are talking about today and the population specific on African American males is a powerful and impactful one for me personally. A lot of the issues and the things that we're going to talk about today and in future talks affected me directly as a young man who went to a four-year school and bombed out. Although my major at that time was technology education, I was a sociology major because I was very social. And after 3 very lackluster semesters, the college said, Kendrick, we enjoy taking your money. Please don't take this personal. We enjoy taking your money, but you have to have some sort of GPA for us to continue to take it. You have to be doing poorly in the school when the school doesn't want your money anymore. So I was academically dismissed after 3 awful semesters, and I said, what the heck am I going to do now? And I was able to go back to community college. And what I found at the college that I went to, at Capital, were faculty and staff that embraced me and supported me and saw that I had talents and saw that I had skills and helped to nurture and cultivate those talent and skills effectively. One of the last things I did before I graduated with my associates, I had a man who became my mentor, Dr. J. Smith. And Dr. J pulls me aside one day and he says, Kendrick, we're going to be doing this panel. I want you to be a part of this panel discussion. I was, okay, Dr. J, what do you need me to do? He said, speak your truth. So I go to this panel, and the topic for the day was recruitment and retention of African American males at community colleges. I said, well, I'm an African American male, this is nothing, right? And I got on that panel and I spoke my truth. And there was something that just impacted me in such a way, because prior to Dr. J pulling me aside, I never thought about it in this sort of context. Me at that time, I'm 22, 23, 24, and I'm enjoying the fact that in every one of my classes, I am one of 3 males and 22 females. I like this place. Can I get my bachelor's here too? But it didn't hit me. It didn't hit me until we had that discussion on that panel that day that, hey, where are the brothers? What happened to my man from first semester I was here? He's not here anymore. And a couple of dudes I used to, sit in the lunchroom with, they're not here anymore. People I talked about, hey, man, you need to come to Capital, man. You can be supported, and there's a lot of females there. They never came. And it wasn't until that panel that day and we started having some impactful discussion, the light bulb went off, right? I fast forward however many number of years to when I started my master's program and we had to do our project. And my advisor said, well, Kendrick, I'm gonna tell you what I tell everybody else. You have to pick something that you're gonna be passionate about, because there's gonna be those days you're not gonna wanna do that research. You're not gonna wanna write that paper. You know, you're gonna have to pull from deep down to get through to do what you need to do. He said, tell me something you're passionate about. And I didn't hesitate. I said the recruitment and retention of African-American males in a community college setting. And that was my master's project. What I was able to see on the other side of it is that, look, we do great things on our campuses. We do. We reach a number of students that would not have the opportunity to go on to higher education through the developmental education, through certificate programs, through the associates degrees that we offer on our campuses. We are connecting with the type of student that the four-year school does not bother with, for whatever reason. The jobs that you do on this campus day in and day out is so needed and so necessary, because the people that you graduate every May might not have the opportunities at University of Maryland. Well, let's be honest. You are in direct contact with students. Some have gone to the four-year experience like myself. I went and I was not ready. And not only was I not ready, there was no one there to support me. There were other brothers on that campus, but we were fragmented, and we were here, and we were here, and we were here, and we never came together. And we all suffered through the exact same issues and problems. This one needed to take math 099. This one needed to take English 50. So the work that we do, the work that Dr. Gardenhire and I do, is impactful and meaningful to me, because I knew that however many years ago, I needed someone to support me the way that you are supporting your students here. You are all here because you are concerned. And that's a big step, because I'm going to tell you, we have a lot of conversations with a lot of people and, higher ups at different community college campuses, deans and presidents or whatever the case may be. And so many of them are scared to take the step that Montgomery is taking today, to even have the discussion. Because let's be real. If for the last 30 years, your graduation rates of African American males has changed a 0.5 percentage point from 1982 to 2002, and there has been no intervention to change it, then we have accepted that this is just something that they do. They're not here to get a degree. They're not here to get a certificate. And yet, they still take these young people's money. They were nice enough to kick me out at Central Connecticut State University. You're doing so bad, we can't take your money anymore. It's like stealing. There are other campuses that will take that money for as long as you want to come. As long as you want to come, keep getting your financial aid checks and cashing it out and getting new Timbs and a laptop. As long as you want to keep doing that, keep on coming back. We're not concerned if you actually graduate or not, because somebody else is graduating at a much higher percentage. The step that Montgomery has taken today is hopefully the first of a series of conversations that you guys will have, start now and continue to have, and be able to do the things that you need to do to better support African American male students on this campus. We're going to talk about ways that you can actively engage your campus. Because one of the things that we're going to talk about is there is no one-size-fits-all program. What worked here might not work there. The supports that you have already built in and established here might need a little tweaking, but what goes on here might not work at another campus. some of the conversation that we're going to have today is going to give you guys an opportunity to say what you see here day in, day out, and how can we do something different to hopefully create change and give a different outcome. I don't know what your number is for the last 30 years, but I can tell you nationally, it has not changed more than a half a percentage point since 1980. Year in, year out, year in, year out.
Do you want to go ahead? I'll go ahead and I'll talk without a PowerPoint. I do that.
Well, I mean, we can.
So President Obama was going to speak to you, and he spoke to the joint session of Congress back in February of 2009, where he set out the importance of the National Completion Agenda. And we have a beautiful timeline, which you might be able to see. So there's the video that would have played. He speaks so beautifully.
Well, I mean, we had the video from the laptop,
Play the video.
the laptop will soon die. So.
Okay, we'll play that one. There he is.
The third challenge we must address is the urgent need to expand the promise of education in America. In a global economy where the most valuable skill you can sell is your knowledge, a good education is no longer just a pathway to opportunity, it is a prerequisite. Right now, 3/4 of the fastest growing occupations require more than a high school diploma. And yet just over half of our citizens have that level of education. We have one of the highest high school dropout rates of any industrialized nation, and half of the students who begin college never finish. This is a prescription for economic decline, because we know the countries that outteach us today will outcompete us tomorrow. And that is why it will be the goal of this administration to ensure that every child has access to a complete and competitive education from the day they are born to the day they begin a career. That is a promise we have to make to the children of America. So tonight I ask every American to commit to at least 1 year or more of higher education or career training. This can be a community college or a 4-year school, vocational training or an apprenticeship. But whatever the training may be, every American will need to get more than a high school diploma. And dropping out of high school is no longer an option. It's not just quitting on yourself, it's quitting on your country. And this country needs and values the talents of every American. That's why we will provide the support necessary for all young Americans to complete college and meet a new goal. By 2020, America will once again have the highest proportion of college graduates in the world. That is a goal we can meet. That's a goal we can meet.
So President Obama made this statement in 2009. And the actual proportion and percentage he set for American adults to be holding a high quality certificate or degree was 55%. And that proportion should be attained by the year 2020. The year before, actually, in 2008, the Lumina Foundation for Education set a national graduation benchmark of 60% of adults by the year 2025. And the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation also in that year set a different benchmark of increasing the number of college graduates by 50%, again by 2025. If we jump ahead and think about what's happening at the community college level and the policy level, the American Association of Community Colleges in April of 2010 released the call to action report similar to the Bill and Melinda Gates benchmark, calling for a 50% more community college graduates by 2020. So as President Obama said, the imperative behind the college completion agenda is really primarily an economic one. America, for many of the years that we've been measuring rates of college graduation, has been number one for many, many years. And in the last 15 years or so, or actually spanning a little bit further back, America started to slip. We're now number 14 out of the developed countries, Europe, Asia, and on our continent, in terms of young adults with post-secondary degrees. Both European and Asian countries have made significant gains in graduating greater proportions of young people relative to the US. According to much of the research that's out there about the need for more college degrees, by 2018, America will need 22 million new college degrees. But estimates report that we're going to fall at least 3 million short of that in terms of post-secondary degrees, which includes associate's, bachelor's, and graduate degrees. As you could extrapolate, the need for these degrees is driven by employers who need people with higher and higher levels of skills, which is critical for the current economy and the coming economy that we face in terms of global competitiveness. Part of our regaining our position as an economic leader means using all of our nation's human resources. I think we've relied for too long on developing only those who are ready, and we need to expand that condition to prepare everybody who's here. And for us, in particular to our presentation today, that really does include a focus on African American men who have been, by and large, economically underutilized, especially in terms of higher level positions in our national economy, sort of living on the economic margins for far too long. America really can't afford to waste a single person anymore. So the call from both the federal government, which is sort of a new area for them actually, to be setting benchmarks around completion and moving that discussion forward. The Department of Education has really not focused specifically on completion as an outcome until more recently, and foundations and college federations sort of focusing all together on this completion concept. In our analysis, we've found there are, between federations, colleges, and foundations and other associations of educational leaders in post-secondary field, perhaps hundreds of college completion initiatives running around the country now. Partly because there's money behind them, which inspires people to act, but also because I think people understand that these demands on our country are real. And so people in various configurations are associating themselves to move forward many different initiatives. So while we can know lots of details about these various initiatives, this is 5 out of maybe 200, they approach the concept of college completion in different ways. But the thing that sort of underlies all of them is an understanding or a focus in one way or another on closing graduation gaps between underrepresented students and majority students, and increasing rates of graduation for lots of low income or students of color. I think it's interesting though, when we did our exploration, while we found sort of a general interest in low-income students, none of the approaches named African American students or African American male students as a particular subgroup of interest. There actually were a couple that focus on Latino students, but not one oddly, that identifies Black men as a student subgroup that's critical. We think this is an oversight. But moving forward, we can see, hopefully, and by your presence here, that there's potential to develop that. And developing that focus on African American men is certainly something that we work on in our company. So as I said, a large portion of the drive to increase college completion rates is this need for our economy to be stronger, to strengthen our economy and to strengthen the members of our country and workers in our country to be better equipped. In particular, as I said, African American men have not been targeted by these completion approaches thus far in terms of direct. In terms of a direct targeting of them in these associations, but to understand a little bit better about this untapped nature of African American men, we can see from this statistic, which came out of an excellent report. I recommend all of you take a look at it, called "The Educational Experiences of Young Men of Color" in the College Board. Came out in 2011. Maybe it was surprising to you, but actually the numbers of young African American men, these are aged 15 to 24, who are involved in something. So about 34% are in post-secondary ed, about 1% is in the military, about 20% are employed. We've got about 10%, unfortunately, who are incarcerated or deceased. But that still leaves a huge proportion, about a third, who are neither working or in school. And this is really what we're talking about when we're talking about an untapped or wasted human resource. The proportion is far too large. What you might ask, what is that relative to other groups? Some other men of color, actually like Native American men, look worse than this. So some look worse. And then if you compare it to white men, this looks worse. So it's relative, but really, I try not to make relative statements because whose pain is worse? I don't know. It's hard to say. But on its face, almost 35% of young African American men not doing anything is too many. It's too much. Period. So I'm going to actually take a little pause here and see if you all have any questions, any reactions to this first set of pieces of information about the completion agenda. Does it make sense? Does our configuration of the information make sense? Go ahead.
Do you have similar statistics on Black women?
This report was only on men. And so this report doesn't pull it, but African American women in general are enrolled in post-secondary at a greater rate, are employed at a greater rate, or at about a comparable rate to African American young men. Probably are in the military and in prison less, but the post-secondary and working numbers make them come off, in particular for young women, post-secondary numbers are better. Yeah. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Yeah. When those major initiatives did not target African American men, why not?
Why not?
Was a question raised ever by either of you or anyone else? Why not?
We pose it all the time. I think the question really is a matter of who's going to spearhead that. And unfortunately, leading African American associations like the Urban League and the NAACP have not been playing a huge role in this, oddly. So we're trying to figure that out. Although we have established a partnership with the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, and we're on their agenda. We just wrote I think they shared the article with you, or they may have shared the article with you. We wrote an article for them about this same issue, the completion agenda, just to inform our legislators at the national level about the issue. We're planning some meetings with some specific legislators who are on the education committee to talk to them further about this. But why foundations haven't taken this up is still is an excellent question.
I have a follow-up. Sure. Is it possible that African American men resent being in that spotlight? Resent being, in some ways, perceived as either a victim or just can you just leave us alone? Is it possible that this group of men don't necessarily want to be identified and examined and measured and all of the things that need to happen when you are a part of this kind of agenda?
I think your question is really interesting. I think whether or not African American men as students themselves want to be studied or not probably is irrelevant to the people who decide what they're going to study, because those two groups don't really talk often. However, I think your point is absolutely valid. In research that I've done with men of color, specifically on community college campuses, when we talked about providing them with supports, lots of times they said, we don't want to be pulled out in that way. So when policymakers are thinking about how do we approach this, sometimes they have to think about it in a different way, to think about how do we mandate this for everyone so that we don't perhaps identify students in this or that way in terms of their race and gender that may be stigmatizing, when we can make sure that they get the services by naming it a different, so students in need of a developmental course or students in need, first time in college students or other things, to provide the supports that don't in turn stigmatize students. But I think they're two different issues. So figuring out how to deal with the students, how to address and provide supports to students who are individuals on your campus today is one issue, and then thinking about whether students would be willing to or interested in being part of larger national or large-scale initiatives are two different things.
No, I'm looking at it as more as a microcosm. One last comment. Because the idea is that if you build it, they will come. And I don't necessarily think that's valid.
No, I think that's right.
I could give you a tour of this campus. I've been here a while, and I could show you every major support center that you could imagine. We have support centers that we don't have places to put them.
Right. There's a lot of support. Excellent.
And I work in an administrative support position, and I don't have people coming to me complaining about groups of Hispanic males and they can't get up the steps to get to the cafeteria. And I don't have people complaining to me about groups of Asian men playing ball on the parking lot. I have people complaining to me about whatever this perception is about their reaction to groups of African American males doing whatever they perceive as being non-collegial.
Right.
So, my response to that is, what did you say to them directly? What responsibility have you taken so they can be somehow convinced that their behavior isn't necessarily appropriate? So at some point, when I have that
what do people say when you ask them?
I'm scared, that's what they say. Sorry about that. But that's what they say. They're uncomfortable. And this is more in my head because we stopped, about 3 years ago, we decided that it would be a non-smoking campus. So everybody was put in the same pot. Okay. Whether whatever color you were, you had to stop smoking. It caused a lot of stress. But my whole point is, I think that there's this kind of this elephant that's in the center of the room, that there's a little guilt that gets passed around, like, are you doing enough? And I know what the budget is, I know what the resources are, I know how talented most of these people are in this room, and I know where we rank in terms of our national profile, and perhaps we're not doing enough. But what I'm hoping to find out today is, what's the gap? What's missing in terms of what do these African American male students want from us, and how do we deliver on that? Okay.
Without giving away the recipe to original Coke, We are actually going to touch on a lot of the things that you just mentioned in about 40 minutes. Oh, okay. So we don't want to get too deep into it now because this is actually an active conversation that you as a group will start and will kind of help guide you through some things. So keep all those wonderful thoughts you're having right here because your group is going to need you. Okay? What we're going to do now is transition to learning objective number 2. I don't do the podium thing too well. My ADHD won't allow me to do that. So we're going to talk a little bit about the role of community colleges in contributing to the National Completion Agenda. It was important to kind of set the frame of the National Completion Agenda because here's the reality. The numbers that Lumina and President Obama and the Gates Foundation and the AACC are lofty. The reality of the situation is there is no way we as a collective unit are going to come anywhere close to those numbers unless we actively look at ways to graduate those who historically have not been graduating. Impossible. We're not going to come anywhere close to those numbers. 50, 55, 60%. Newly graduated students, it is not going to happen unless we make a concentrated effort to make it happen, particularly with a group of students that traditionally nothing has changed in 30 years for. So we're going to play another quick clip from our 44th president.
These colleges are the unsung heroes of America's education system. They may not get the credit they deserve, they may not get the same resources as other schools, but they provide a gateway to millions of Americans to good jobs and a better life. These are places where young people can continue their education without taking on a lot of debt. These are places where workers can gain new skills to move up in their careers. These are places where anyone with a desire to learn and to grow can take a chance on a brighter future for themselves and their families, whether that's a single mom or a returning soldier or an aspiring entrepreneur. And community colleges aren't just the key to the future of their students, they're also one of the keys to the future of our country. We are in a global competition to lead in the growth industries of the 21st century. And that leadership depends on a well-educated, highly skilled workforce. We know, for example, that in the coming years, jobs requiring at least an associate's degree are going to grow twice as fast as jobs that don't require college. We will not fill those jobs or keep those jobs on our shores without community colleges. So it was no surprise when one of the main recommendations of my Economic Advisory Board, who I met with yesterday, was to expand education and job training. These are executives from some of America's top companies. Their businesses need a steady supply of people who can step into jobs involving a lot of technical knowledge and skill. They understand the importance of making sure we're preparing folks for the jobs of the future. In fact, throughout our history, whenever we faced economic challenges, we've responded by seeking new ways to harness the talents of our people. And that's one of the primary reasons that we have prospered.
All right, so we're going to get a little bit into the numbers. In our enrollment statistics, the National Center of Education Statistics reports that of the 17.6 million people enrolled in college in the fall of 2011, 43% of those were attending a two-year school. Of black men enrolled in college, over 40% attend community colleges, which is more than any other post-secondary institution. Once again, the job that we do here at community college is provide access to those who would not normally get it. And you see them coming through this campus day in, day out. We know your job is tough. We know that resources are tight. But somehow we need to make sure that we are able to get them on this campus, keep them on this campus, and graduate them from this campus, right? So what do our community colleges do well? What do you guys do well here at Montgomery? You provide open access, right? You take in students that other schools will not take in. And when they're not up to speed, we get them developmentally ready. So sometimes they got to do those 099s and them 050s, right? Job training, certificates for those who are already employed but need to get that leg up, need to get a little more training. The associate degree is that 2-year certificate. That 2-year certificate can be that building block that everything else is possible. When I failed out of Central Connecticut State University, people said, this kid is done. He's done. What's going to happen, right? Now, I worked at Mrs. Fields Cookies and stuff for a while. I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I need to do something else. Side note, when I was that 17-year-old freshman at Central Connecticut State University, I had a newborn son. It wasn't just me. I had some responsibilities. So when I failed out, it wasn't just me failing out, it was us failing out. Coming back to community college was so important because it gave me that step that I needed to take the next step and then the next step. To finish that associate's, to finish that bachelor's, to finish that master's, to go to Morgan State and work on this doctorate. If anybody wants to take some tests for me, please raise your hand. Transfer to 4-year schools. Having that ability to even if you make that stumble, to be able to recollect yourself, get the skills that you need to get to be able to be a productive student, and then go back. There was no prouder moment, with the exception of the birth of my children, than being able, after failing out of one 4-year school, to go to another one and graduate, to walk that walk, to get that diploma. It took me 16 years to finish that bachelor's. It took 18 months to finish that master's, though. All right.
So we're thinking about community colleges enrolling so many students of the 17 million coming in each year, approximately, and so many who are here at community colleges, and thinking about the larger policy discussions that have been going on around colleges and community college in particular for the last 20 years, a lot of the conversation has been about access, and open access is critical. The fact that you provide open access and provide everyone an opportunity to come to college is a critical resource to your community and a critical function of the community college. But access is only half of the equation. If students don't come out the other end, then in some ways, what's the point of all that access? I think when you think about writing a resume as a student, writing down some college only gets you so far. Writing down an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree will take you a lot farther. So that we see, fortunately, the conversation has changed from focus on access at the community college level to really thinking about what do we do, how do we get people out? And we're thinking, I think lots of people are thinking hard about that. I think the controversy for community colleges has often been, we provide open access. You can't count our graduation rates. You can't count our rates of graduation because people come in unprepared. You can't do that. That's not fair. Not everybody who comes to community college comes for a degree. You've got to fix how you count these numbers. Fortunately, in the last couple of years, people have been fixing that. So when we think about community college metrics of success and graduation, we're only counting nowadays full-time, first time in college, degree-seeking students, and looking at it at 150% time. So within 3 years, how many students are graduating who are coming in looking for a degree? Not who are coming in for a couple classes or want to do Zumba or, we're not counting those folks. And for a long time, they were counted. So we've got the numbers right, it looks like, and we're hoping that by doing that, we can get a better sense of who's succeeding and who's not in community colleges. Now we look at this little figure. This gives us exactly what I just said. First time in college, full-time degree-seeking students. And unfortunately, the numbers still aren't that good. We look at all students nationwide. There's the little orange bar at the bottom. 20% of students who come into a community college graduate with an associate's degree within 3 years. If we look at the state of Maryland, the little yellow bar above there, unfortunately that number is about 14%. If we look at males, which is what we're talking about here today, it's about the same, but a little bit worse for men. So actually females are driving, to answer that question, somebody had a question about females. Females are driving some of the completion and success rates that we see nationally and at the state level. But for men, nationally about 20% graduate within 3 years, and in Maryland it's about 13%. And nationally, white men are graduating at about 23%, and it's 16% here in the state. And black men are, unfortunately, at the lower end of our spectrum of things we're comparing on this slide, with about 12% graduating nationally and about 6% of students who enter, black male students who enter community college here in the state of Maryland, graduate with an associate's degree within 3 years. That's a little potentially.
Have you tried to, has anybody looked at implementing all types of spearheaded sort of directed programs, maybe to countermeasures to drive the risk down?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know when you came into the room, but
No, reason why I asked that, I understand that.
yeah, go ahead.
Years ago, I worked for Johns Hopkins University, of which I actually, I talk pretty loud, man. Okay. Years ago, okay, I'm sorry.
Camera.
Years ago, I graduated from Johns Hopkins many, many years ago, but I was asked to stay back and work with a bunch of kids, college kids, in the program called Homes. These were spearheaded programs in which I was between them and their academic advisor. So there was a second level of safety net to be put in place in the system. And I've noticed that it did work. I mean, all the students graduated and went on, but there has to be a second fold, because some of these students don't come talk to the advisor. I've been a college teacher myself also for about 25 years. Yes. Some of them don't come and talk and tell them when they have problems. So you need an extra safety net of somebody they can probably talk to that can take into account vulnerability, threat, and impact and drive that risk variable down. You've collected all the data. You have to place maybe some countermeasures in so you can compare whether those countermeasures are working.
No, absolutely.
You're looking at the outcomes that you have.
I think that's absolutely true. I think there are lots of interventions that have gone on for lots of years, and absolutely the case. Some not as intensive as the ones you're talking about, or working at that level, which you're identifying as an appropriate level of intervention. But I'd say, as a counterbalancing to what you said, that there have been lots of interventions, and the numbers still don't move a lot, unfortunately, because they may not be touching enough students, they may not be reaching the right students, they may not be working at the right level that you're talking about, and lots of them might just go unstudied. So lots of programs run and run and run based on somebody's gut feeling, and we never know whether they really work or not.
Well, I can only answer that with some of the programs have to be forced. I mean, I grew up in sort of a Catholic curriculum, the archdiocese type, and the nuns would, of course, do things that you and me know they would do if you weren't doing the right things. I think sometimes in situations like this where we're losing the war, you have to put those type of countermeasures in to just, have to be forced. They have to be mandated. It's the way if you want to drive the numbers to success. Right. If not, the numbers will go, and they'll probably go back further as, the economy gets worse and things actually, don't do as well. So I can only just say that the countermeasures and that risk analysis piece is a piece that's really nice.
I think it's critical.
That sometimes works. Something to look at if you haven't already employed.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
And another person jumping ahead to my presentation, stepping all on my toes. I'm not cutting the check, brother. I'm not splitting it. Okay. So we're going to now transition to learning objectives 3 and 4, and this is where we start getting a little more interactive, and we're going to start hearing a lot more of what you guys are seeing here in particular, and starting to kind of map a path to what are some of the things that can be done here So learning objective number 3, back up, is to discuss and understand the importance of devoting attention to the academic attainment of black men as a student subgroup to reach the national completion benchmarks. And learning objective number 4 is to discuss how to engage black men on Montgomery's campus.
I'm just going to pause just for a moment. Just from reading the audience, I think they want to spend more on 4 and less on 3. So we're going to try and accommodate you all to get there, to get you there. But we've got some questions for you all to work on first, right?
Okay, so here's what's going to happen now. We love small group discussion. It's great. That's what we do with our students, right? So what we're going to do is this. What's the most judicious way? I can go 1, 2, 3, but since people are already kind of in rows, we're going to take this first row here, plus you two, 1 and 2. You guys are going to be group number 1. The question that you guys are going to come together, we need one person to be a recorder. You guys are going to discuss, is it reasonable to expect community colleges to graduate more black male students? There's a reason that we're asking that question, and once you start getting into the conversation, we'll explain a little bit why. I'll be bouncing around to each group. Okay? So group number 1, so 1, 2, and this first row all together. Is it reasonable to expect community colleges to graduate more black male students? Okay, group number 2, which is going to start here, this young lady here, up until, let's see, up until you right here. So this row and that row right here. You guys are together. Well, actually, that's going to be a little uneven. Why don't we move it up to you? So from here to that young lady there in the beautiful black shawl. All right, that's going to be group 2. And your question is going to be, what is needed from your perspective in terms of supports to faculty and staff to graduate greater numbers of black male students from your campus? What do you need to do here as a group, as a unit? And then from this gentleman here to that entire back row and whoever else I didn't point to is going to be group number 3. And the question that you're going to answer is, what prevents more black male students from graduating from community colleges? Okay, so people started talking a little bit about this already. Somebody was saying something about barriers or what have you. You're gonna talk about, from your experience, what are some of the things that you see are the obstacles that these brothers are facing on this campus. Okay, so how you guys kind of converge. Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Are you making a distinction between African Americans and African descendant students?
Here is, and I'm glad he mentioned that. One of the things that comes out in this topic often is who we are specifying when we say African American male, who are we talking about when we say black male, who are we talking about when we say men of color? Because, okay, I'm in Connecticut, right? Well, you laugh. There's brothers in Connecticut? Yes, all 12 of us. Now, here's the thing. Connecticut has a very large Afro-Caribbean base, very large. Jamaican, especially, people from Trinidad and Tobago. But when you engage directly with those who identify as Afro-Caribbean, they do not put themselves in the same category as African American. So who are we talking about when we say black male? Is there a difference? Are there different types of black males? Well, at this on this campus, probably, right? So that is a distinction that you make as a collective group. Because what's one of the things you may be saying, here's one of the things that when we start getting into the programming aspect, there is no one size fits all. Oh, you guys are all black, so you all like basketball, and you're all going to do this, and blah, 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 and I've got the solution for you. No, you have to know your campus. You have to know your students. You have to know your supports. You need to know the people who support you outside of this campus. Who are you going, which schools do you need to target directly to get there, to get their students? Hopefully by sophomore year, don't wait till senior year, but that's a whole nother thing in and of itself. So the point you make, that is a point that I hope that you bring up within your group, because there is probably a line between what the African American males on this campus see themselves as and what the African males on this campus see themselves as. Because if you go to Harvard and you say, hey, come here, brother, you know, African American, nah, man, that's not me. They will tell you quickly, you know your campus. Discuss that within your group. Any other questions?
How do the numbers identify? The numbers that you just saw from Maryland and for the for the country, how was it figured out here in terms of black men?
Are you brown skinned?
No, do you identify as black?
That's how you exactly. How do you self-identify?
Right. Just like the census or anything else.
Yeah, but we also have those numbers at Montgomery College. I don't know if anybody's checking off Caribbean. You know, I don't know.
We don't know we haven't seen your data up close to know.
I understand. I don't want to be unfair.
All right, we're going to divide.
Okay,
if you can gather into groups.
we got one more question, and then we're going to divvy it up. Yes.
A very good comment. How do you discretize statistically, you know, the segments of populations you're looking at? Because sometimes their cultural expectations, they're a little different. So you have to keep in mind, somebody expected me to do that, whereas they may not be expected in other cultures. So there's kind of, you almost, if you could break it out, which I don't think you can, because the data probably, not unless you look at last names and assume this person is that person, and this person that person, it's kind of hard to kind of figure out. But it would be interesting to see just how those cultural enrichments affect the data.
So the thing, well, we'll get, I won't give away the candy store.
I want you guys to discuss this in your groups, but you can discuss your own perceptions of performance of African students versus African American male students. I think it's worth including in your discussion. So, okay.
So quickly, if we can just kind of hear, you know, your two main answers from each one of your groups. Okay, so who was group one? Group one is here? Okay, group one. Okay, make sure you grab the mic, recorder.
Because we have a lot more than two. I guess most of us expect.
What was your question?
Is it reasonable to expect community colleges to graduate more black male students? Almost all of us said yes. One person pointed out we need to look at students at looking at their income and different stages of their lives. It may take some students more than 3 years to graduate. We also talked about changing perception of Montgomery College from MCPS, that it's now okay to go to community college. And also how the ACES program, the new ACES program, will factor into helping more students graduate.
And I had an opportunity to kind of listen in, and I'm very curious about the ACES program because it sounds like a pipeline program. We're going to get them in high school and graduate them. We're going to get them on this campus and graduate them. We're going to get them to, what was the four-year school? What was the four-year school?
University of Shady Grove is the main.
Okay, so we're going to get them to a four-year school. Let me tell you, I am a fan of pipeline programs. Get them early. We get them access to financial aid planning. Sophomore year in high school, you will be surprised about how many of our students, they sign up for classes 2 days before the semester starts. No one talked to them about financial aid. The parents don't want to give up their tax information and what they need that day for. That's none of their business. If we start the business of educating not only the student but the parent sophomore year, hey, this is something that we need to start thinking about together as a unit and supporting them. A mentoring opportunity as they go through. I don't know about ACES program, but I'm just telling you what I think you need. A mentoring program that takes these young people from sophomore year until they graduate. Having a student here on this campus that can kind of give them the lay of the land. those are going to be things that are going to be important because they're going to start thinking, hey, I can do this, I'm expected to do this, I have support to do this, and why wouldn't I come here? And I know how. So, excellent observations.
Do you have other things, or do you have any? You have one more key one?
We also talked about being careful about grouping black male students together. We have a lot of students from African countries. We have a lot of African American men. You just different. It's not one size fits all, like you said.
Absolutely. And a way to properly address that is, I know the people with the purse strings might not want to hear this, but you might have to look into getting, 2 part-time coordinators, one who is going to specialize with the African American males, one who's going to specialize with the African community as well. Because as you guys are seeing here on this campus, what is a series of barriers for one group may not be the same ones for the second group. Yes, they are all darker skinned, but they don't all have the same needs and necessities and the types of supports that they need to be successful on the campus.
From what I was hearing from a number of different discussions, that there seem to be things happening on campus here for international students that's different than what's happening or more targeted explicitly than what's happening for African American students. Go ahead.
You're right, and you can go a little further than that. I've had the success or the opportunity to teach at all three campuses. And Germantown's a little different atmosphere than it is at Tacoma, than it is at Rockville. It is just interesting, and so they probably some different focused needs that you'd have to talk a little bit as you move into those communities.
Who was group number 2? Group number 2. Okay, thank you. Group 1. Good observations. Group number 2. Who is our recorder?
I don't think I need that. Do I really? Oh, okay. But I'm going to rely on my colleagues as well.
Okay, excellent.
One of the things that we did discuss was having some mechanism that connects with the student at intake. And that could actually be embodied by mandatory orientation, for example, or the freshman requiring the freshman seminar course or courses. We know that these kinds of approaches are successful in terms of getting students engaged and connected to the institution. So even within the orientation, having some breakout sessions for specific groups might be beneficial. We talked about cohorts. Connecting students and registering them in maybe learning communities or cohorts where they are working with a group of people that follow them through and are interested in their connectivity, and then they are looking out for each other peers as well. Somebody handed me this. I'm not sure what this is. One of the other things that we discussed was building relationships, how important it is for faculty and staff, no matter where you are functioning on campus, but to be comfortable building relationships with students as you engage them. Now, you may not be comfortable walking across campus like I am, and I hear a group of students talking, and I hear language or something that is offensive to me, and I think should not be discussed on campus. I don't have any problem stopping and having a gentle conversation with students and informing them of what college policies and procedures are. To be comfortable doing the same thing. And I think one of my colleagues here said that faculty need more training and professional development on understanding the cultural nuances and mores of who's in their classroom, so they'll be more comfortable intervening.
Okay.
What else did I miss? Anything else on here?
I think you did really well.
Okay.
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 Did great.
Knowing your student.
Okay.
Yeah.
And find
Definition of the population.
Go ahead.
How many?
Take the mic. rock the mic. Rock the mic.
No, I mean that's the definition of knowing the campus. Definition what
knowing who the
African
different
American.
cultures are.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Group 2. Excellent observations. Last but not least, Group 3, whoever our recorder is. We're going to try to get through them quickly because we only got about a half hour left.
All right. So we just two ways to categorize what we came up with. The first was one of the things that we think prevents black male students from, not even graduating, just retention, success altogether, is the ways that the students are stigmatized, or, as Michelle said, minoritized, or perceived as a problem. And so we talked briefly about the role of tracking and segregation in the school system before students come here, and teachers' different expectations. And the other category was a lack of, or a real need for mentors and advisors. And I mean, that some of that would apply to a lot of students, but we were talking specifically about how that would be beneficial for Black male students in the context of programs people here have been involved with. And we do have a program on this campus, we should say, Gus, who's here, called Boys to Men. And the target group for that is African American males, and it's been going on for several years. It's a phenomenal program.
And we talked about the need to grow that program on all 3 campuses, to give him resources and funding so that he can, his program can reach more students. Because he does an
Can I
excellent
ask
job.
you about Boys to Men?
Boys to Men.
Does it have an explicit graduation mission? I said, does Boys to Men have an explicit graduation-oriented mission?
Yes, that was the original goal, graduation, transfer, of course, first retention, graduation, transfer, retention. We had it slashed with GPA and or award, but obviously with the national piece, we've had to kind of fudge with the language and make it actually graduation. But yes, that was the original intent.
Excellent. Great. So, my next slide.
Yep. All right, so we're going to touch on those before we get wrapped up.
Go ahead.
One more.
I think this is a really important piece, and it got away from me, sort of my pet peeve. I think it's incumbent upon us to educate parents and family members how they can support their students to be successful academically in college, and how we can reward students who are moving forward successfully, even though they don't have a 3.75 GPA, but try to encourage them, if they're doing well, to do better.
Edward, to build on yours, I think to sort of build in at different points, after you take 12 credits, or maybe after you do 24, some sort of reward system, to recognize their achievement. And I agree with you, not everybody can get a 3.75. But just to get a 2.5 or a 2.75 is a big accomplishment. And so if we can reward the students as they progress through the system, I think that's important.
So I did a study back in 2010 on men of color who were attending 4 community colleges around the country, 2 in the South, 1 in the Southwest, and 2 in the South, really, and 2 in the Southwest. But they had, this study included Native American men, Latino men, and African American men, where I did a qualitative study interviewing 87 of them over the course of that 2008-2009 school year. It was really an exploratory study to find out what kind of factors influence student engagement for this population, what were the key themes that either facilitated their engagement or diminished their engagement. In that study, interestingly, the thing that rose up for men across the board, including the African American men, is the critical influence their identity as men had on their behaviors as students. And this was across racial groups. And so notions of manhood, about independence, about work, about relationship building, and about help seeking are all factors that the literature highlights and as critical for student success, but that by and large run counter to the notions these men held about what it meant to be a man. Now they held very fast, which you can imagine as a female, I hold fast to my identity as a female. They held very fast to their identity as men. And even when it was in conflict with their goal to be successful students, sometimes they face significant challenges overcoming those notions of how men are and how men act and how I am as a man and what I need to do as a student. The men in this study really said frequently that men do it themselves. I do it myself. I don't ask for help. I don't need help. I can't do that. And I'm not going to, because it will compromise my notion of myself. And I'm not willing to do that. As important as I understand school is, I'm still going to work. I need to work. Not only for the practical, I need to pay my rent, my car needs gas, I need to eat, my kids need to eat, but also because men work. So as a man, I'm going to work. And I prioritize that sometimes even above what I need to do as a student. I think we also know about community college students, the majority of them do work. I hear from, when I talk to faculty and staff, they say these students work too much, they work too much, they work too much. But I think the reality is that the community college student is a working student by and large. And so taking that notion and understanding that notion, in particular in understanding that notion in relation to men, I think is critical for figuring out what kind of strategies we can use to approach them. The men talked about relationships, and you guys, I heard when I was walking around, you guys talking about relationships as well. Building relationships with students, being comfortable building relationships with students. The students also talked about, when they're talking about peers, challenges building relationships with peers, because they came often from communities where friends were their downfall previously. And so they felt skeptical about building relationships with students on their own campus, because I'm here to get my degree. I'm not here to make friends. I'm not here to make friends was a very common phrase we heard. I'm here to do what I'm here to do. But we know that peer networks are critical, positive peer networks are critical for student success, because that's the person you can call when you miss class. What was the assignment? What did the teacher talk about? Who can I study with? Those kinds of things. And so again, sort of this notion that these men were coming in with saying, I'm not here to make friends, runs counter to their ability to be successful as students. They also didn't apply for financial aid very often sometimes. I'd rather eat ramen, was a phrase I heard. I don't ask for help, I'm not gonna ask for welfare, I'm not asking for help. Partly because, again, it was a countervailing, I'd rather work for it, but also because of ignorance about the financial aid process. So it's two things in that case. While these behaviors reinforce their identities as men, they really did have the potential to challenge them in terms of their ability to be successful. I'd say the upside of this, however, was, in other research I've done, that when you, number one, mandate, and number two, provide enough support very early on, these are things you all identified and what you were talking about, but engage them even in the first 3 weeks. The community college survey of student engagement panel committee that I'm on has done a study or presented some information at a colloquium we were at last year, where it took video of students. So it took video of students right before they started. These were all men, young men of color. They said, I'm so excited, I'm ready, I'm gonna do it, I got this goals, I'm gonna get there, I'm gonna do it. They took a video of them a week later. Their energy was a little bit less. I'm not sure. I think I can do it. They took a video another week later. They're looking down. They're not looking at the camera. They're not looking at the interviewer. They're saying, I don't know if this is for me. I might have made a mistake. And by the third week, a bunch weren't there. And by the third week, the ones that were still there were saying, I think I might have made a mistake. College isn't for me. And so engaging them when they have that energy and say, yes, I can, from day one, before they get to week 3. We're not talking third semester. We're talking third week of your first semester. If you're not there on them intensively right away, we can lose them. And so there is hope, but we need to change our strategies, which you all talked about here about, I think on the second page, about providing those orientations up front and targeting those services up front and mandating everything, I think are right on track. I think that's the right thinking in terms of this population. I'd say the other upside of that is students, because we talk to them over the course of a school year, so students, not everybody we talked to at the beginning was still there at the end. We went 3 times over the course of a school year. But the ones who were there, or the ones who had been there a little bit longer, matured over time as students and overcame a lot of these issues, these notions of conflict between manhood and student success, and said, it's okay for me to talk to these teachers. I built a relationship with this or that one. I came to trust this or that one over time. But it takes a secure space to hold them there long enough to get them to that point of maturity as a student to understand that asking for help, seeking help is not something that's going to compromise their notion of themselves as a man.
So the question I kind of kept hearing going through the groups was, what can we do? What do we do? How do we support these students in a manner that they need to be supported so that they can graduate? Supports for Black men should have elements of strength-based approach. That's always number one. I'm not going to go through the entire list, but strength-based approach, okay? It starts with us. We are the frontline people. Whether you're an instructor, a professor, you work in financial aid, you're a counselor, you're the lunch lady, we have to look at these students and help them to see talents and strengths that maybe they don't even see in themselves. Lisa started to point that first 3-4 weeks of the school year is so critical. They come in here with so much energy. They come in so excited. They come in so ready. What happens around second week of school? You get that first written assignment back, huh? I'm ready to go. Oh my goodness. What is this? Them red marks. Now the energy starts to dissipate, right? When we start with a positive strength-based approach, we are looking at every single person we come in direct contact with, and we are operating at a point of strength instead of deficit. Let me tell you something. That 18, 19-year-old student that stands in front of you, they know what high school they went to. They hear in the news that their high school sucks. They're unprepared. They're underprepared. They know it. They've been hearing it for 4 years. You went to what? You're not telling them anything new. When you say, oh, okay, well, you went there. Yeah, yeah. Well, we're going to work with you the best we can anyway, right? We have to start with a basis of strength instead of deficit, because the majority of students have been hearing and accepting deficit for X amount of years. Students as partners, we suffer, I'm sorry, I love y'all all, I'm one of you. We suffer from this disease called adultivism. We are the adults and we have the degrees and we have those letters after our names, so we know what's best for you. You're going to come to this program because this program works in San Antonio, Texas, and it's going to work here. All you got to do is commit, right? We come up with these great programs, and never once do we ask a single student, hey, what would get you in here? What would get some of your boys in here? What would get the guys that you hang out with at the CAF or at the Rock or at the Bridge? You guys can think about 3 places right now on this campus that brothers hang out every single day. Every campus is different. Sometimes it's the ball court, sometimes it's the CAF, sometimes it's a step in front of the library, but not the actual library. What's going to get the guys that you hang out with into this program. We never ask that. We do not see students as partners. We create programs independent of them and then expect them to come in and support it. And not only support it, but come in and commit to it because we said this is going to help you. This is going to be right for you. We know the way. What do you mean? I've got a master's. We need to do a better job of actively engaging students to become partners in the programs that they're going to be participating in. That not only means in the building of the program, but the supporting of the program. Because what you want to happen is you want those students that go through that program successfully to now be a mentor to the new group of students that are coming in behind them. You want the successes from this cohort to now say, look here, young blood, I was here. I know. Here's the reality of the situation. Brothers, I know, you make a little money, start looking a little better, you start putting on bow ties and $500 cufflinks or whatever. They do not see you as one of them. Come on, man, you graduated and I wasn't even born when you graduated. What you know about me and my situation, right? But maybe some of that same information that we're trying to impart to them is easier digestible when it comes from someone who is a couple of years older than them and has gone through the same struggle more recently. I love the guys that I work with till I'm blue in the face, but you know what? Only a certain percentage of them will say, hey, you know what, Mr. K, I feel him. Yeah, he had a kid when he was in high school and da-da-da, and look at him now. Only a certain percentage of them are getting that message, even though we might have a shared experience. But the guy that went through the program 2 years ago, and say, oh, yeah, you've got Dr. B. Oh, yeah, she's a good teacher. You got to take her, da-da-da-da. She's going to challenge you, but you're going to get the information you need to get. All right, cool. Let me sign up for that class. We need to do a better job of including students into the programming. Leadership development. We don't do this enough. We don't do this enough. We can all think of a handful of success stories for however long you've been here on this campus. We can all think about 3 or 4 or 5 students that you said, you know what, when you came in, you was at level A and you left here at level Z and look at you now. We know, we've always known you were going to do great things. We do a very poor job of pulling those people back. We do a very poor job of developing new leaders. We do. We see sometimes we're in this notion that individual was one of a chosen few. He did it, he just had a different drive than everybody else. We say stuff like that sometimes. You know what? If Carl had the same drive that Pete had, man, Carl would be, man, he'd be bad, boy. We say things like that. We do not do a good enough job to develop leaders on the campus while we still have them on the campus.
And I think the other part of that is the men that I talk to are hungry for leadership opportunities. I think they see leadership as a natural thing that men do. They may not have had opportunities to do so as younger men, but they want those opportunities. And so facilitating those either even in the classroom, through programming, or wherever you are on campus, I think is critical to increase that level of engagement, that level of commitment, and how attached they are to their school experience.
So here are some effective programming types that have been out there. We won't go through the whole list, but we're going to highlight a couple. And some of these things may be applicable to your campus and some of the things that you can implement here. Academic boot camps, and you can actually put academic boot camp and summer bridge in the same sort of category. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a cohort of high school juniors or high school seniors. We're going to get them on this campus for 4, 6, 8 weeks. And we're going to have them go through your entry-level math or your entry-level English course here. And we're going to give them an opportunity to know what it's like to take college level course. And we're going to support them at every turn. And they're going to graduate and finish that course, and they're going to have 3 credits in the bank. Hey, you graduate, you don't have to take that class now, right? What does that do for a student that has not had that sort of experience, to leave a high school, to come to a college campus, to take this class, to be challenged, to pass, to have that 3 credits in the bank from when they graduate? What does that do to a student? That experience is going to spread through the rest of their classes, because now they know that they can achieve at a higher level and a higher expectation than what they've been experiencing at their high school. Right? Summer bridge programs, similar sort of thing. Now, one of the things that I've done in my role as coordinator, one of the things that we used to do was a week-long boot camp. So we would take 20 males and 20 females, all African American, Latino. We'd get them for a whole week, and we would get them prepared for what it was going to be like when they got on that campus full time. Okay? We would literally walk them from office to office and say, hey, this is Cheryl. Cheryl's in financial aid. You let Cheryl know you're down with brother to brother or sister to sister. Cheryl's the one you want to talk to. That's our girl. She's going to support you. Why is that important? Because now this navigation, this maze, now we have a face to go with the name, to go with the department. Here's the reality of the situation. If a young person on this campus doesn't know where something is, they're going to ask. They're going to walk by financial aid 17 times. And they're not going to care until they get that letter in the mail or they get that do not seat thing. I don't know if I've been a victim of do not seat. Mr. Roundtree, yeah, you got a financial issue you got to take care of before you can come back to class. Huh? That's when they're going to go to financial aid, maybe, because now it's a pride issue. And maybe if they don't know Cheryl is in there who's going to listen and actively engage and walk them through their problem, they may or may not come back. Who are familiar with December graduates? We know what December graduates are, right? You start your program freshman year, first semester, full courses, and then you get those grades that you say, I might be making a mistake, and then the semester ends in December and you never come back. That's a December graduate. Oh, by the way, you still owe us $4,500. Because we don't care if you graduate or not, right? I'm going to skip down to intrusive counseling because I think I heard that in this group. It was this group or this group. Somebody said something about intrusive counseling. One of the things that I did in the program that I ran at Manchester Community College in Connecticut, we did intrusive counseling. So once you signed up for our program and said, hey, I can benefit from this program, and you put your name on the dotted line, you automatically got put into this system, right? That would alert all of your professors that you had that semester. And your professor would have to give us a little weekly report. Has such and such been showing up? What are the current grades? How was the general attitude? Are there any issues or concerns? And week by week, we would get those reports back from professors, right? Why? Why do we have to get intrusive? Because that brother will sit in front of you, Solomon, what's going on, brother? How's everything going? Oh, everything's good. Yeah, because I know this is your second time taking English 110, so composition's going well, it's all right. Okay. That's funny because, I got this report from Dr. Coleman, and it says, hey, you missed the last 2 classes.
Well, that's your liquor.
Well, you see. Hey, I got a problem with her. Look here. Sometimes we have to go that step, and we have to do it in a manner that we're not doing it to embarrass you. We're not doing it because we don't trust you, even though we don't trust you. We're not doing it because we want to hurt you. We're doing it because we need to help you. And if we don't know what the problem is, we can't help you navigate to get to the solution. Dr. Gardner spoke before, there are some actions that happen out in the community that are counterproductive to what it is to be a successful student. And yes, one of those things is in the streets, I can't ask people to take care of me because I've been taught I need to be a strong black man and take care of it myself. I don't ask nobody for nothing. So I'm not going to ask this white lady for help because I'm failing this class. That's the reality. That is the reality.
Excuse me, can I ask you a question? I found that really interesting, what you said as well, because I have two boys that are 11 and 12, and my older son has that mentality even now. And so I just wonder if there are things we can do even in middle or high school to help change that philosophy that you can get help and that's not a negative.
A lot of it, honestly, as parents, we do the best we can to support those kids when they're in the house. And we give them all the love and learning and lessons that we can give them when they're in our house. The problem with that is at 8 o'clock a.m., they go to school for several hours. And everybody out there don't love your kid the way you love your kid. And everybody out there doesn't support your kid the way you support your kid. And especially at 11 and 12, that's when the mixed messages start coming in. Because you say, I don't expect any child in my household is going to drink or do drugs or blah, 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 blah. And then they go to school and somebody, man, hit this weed, man. It's not that bad. Look at me. I'm okay. Right? The best thing that you can do, honestly, is continue to give that guidance and move in that direction. Do team sports. Because here's the thing. When we start to take on that mentality that I am me, I'm big and bad, I don't need no help, I don't need support, whatever, we internalize that. And if that's going on at 8 and 9, that's going to go on at 15 and 16, that's going to go on at 21 and 22. And we know everybody here at 21 and 22 needed some help in something at some point. Look here, there is no student, I don't care if you are a 2.7 student or a 4.0 student, both of those students needed help, right? One was able to navigate and ask the questions in a manner that they received help. One isn't.
I think the other part of that is also to think about or to learn and discuss with your kids or your students what they want. I think we want a lot of things for them, but understanding what they want and then figuring out how to tie what they want to behaviors they need to do to get there, and to be honest with them about the structure that they faced. Like the school environment may not be that supportive place that I don't know, the schools here are probably excellent, I don't know. But the schools may not be that supportive place, or you might hear some this or that from other people, but understanding who I am, I think it's critical for these men that we're talking about here, or for kids. I have a 7-year-old boy, and understand what you're saying, but understanding and helping them understand and coming to understand from ourselves through dialogue, through conversation, through what Freire calls praxis, this exchange of information on a very elemental level, is the way to get people to do what to choose behaviors that are going to support their own goals. But understanding what their goals are and helping them understand what their goals are and why it's important for you to do X, Y, and Z without shaking their fingers, to get them to understand why is it important for me to do X, Y, and Z to get where I want to go.
I think also group dynamics can help sometimes also. I was involved with a program for about 20 years, which we educated kids at K through 12, engineering in the summertime. And sometimes when the kids come to see other kids, getting help, it's not bad. Sometimes that group dynamics, our whole interface process helps them to learn that I can ask somebody else for help. So sometimes exposure to these summer programs will allow them to grow also.
Absolutely.
I do believe.
The program that I ran, like I said, we came in the summer, 20 students deep, and we would meet every other week as a group. I would meet with each of the 20 individually throughout the week. We would have different sorts of collective programming. That first semester on campus, they were in the student development course together as a group. So what would happen is during the course of that first, 8, 9, 10 weeks, they start to see each other in the hallways. They would see each other in their different classes or what have you. And when we start talking during these bi-weekly sessions, if somebody's struggling in math, you say, man, I just can't get it. I'm having some difficulty. Before I can say, hey, why don't we make sure we get you an appointment at the academic support center? One of the other brothers will say, man, I got that. What class you in? All right, we're going to work together. I got you. Because what happens is they're going to start supporting each other because they're in that group for an extended period of time. Mm-hmm. Some will start taking classes with each other during subsequent semesters together. So it wasn't necessarily a learning community in a typical sense. But what we saw, what would happen is, there would be clusters of them that would start moving together during different courses or what have you. And if I know this one is struggling in computer classes and I'm a whiz, come on, man, I got you. I'm gonna support you. And the other good thing that happened with that, like I said, every campus has those areas, the ball court, the calf, or whatever. Mm-hmm. At Manchester Community College, it was the calf. And we tell people real early in the game, I don't want to catch you down at the calf. Because nothing good happens at the calf, right? So what would happen? One of the brothers in the program be sitting around, messing around with the girls at calf when somebody else. Yo, Jalik, come on, man, come on.
Class.
Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, let's go. It was self-regulation, right? And that's where you know you got success going on, because it doesn't always have to be from us, the adults, the coordinator. It's they're saying that we need to change the behavior ourselves. That's where the real power comes from, right?
May I ask a question for you? Has your research indicated that technology, and particularly I'm interested in the whole idea of how technology impacts communication, has it enhanced the success of Black men in higher education, or is it perceived, based on your research, as a detriment?
The thing that I've seen with technology is it's only beneficial to those who have it and those who have access to it.
I'm talking about attention span. I'm talking about distraction. I'm talking about study habits. I'm talking about 168 hours in a week.
She's talking about like social media and things distracting.
And communication skills.
Here's something that was interesting about what we did in our group. So we had a Facebook page. We had a Twitter page that we didn't really mess with too tight, but we had a Facebook page. So anybody that was in the group that we knew was on Facebook, we would have them add us. So part of it was so that you would get the updates in case you missed a meeting or whatever. But part of it was we wanted to see as counselors, okay, who's doing what? Because you would be surprised. I love my students, but you would be surprised what stupid 19-year-olds put on Facebook. Man, I ain't do good in that class because I got sick over the weekend and I couldn't make it to class on Monday. Nah, brother, you couldn't make it to class on Monday because of this picture. We got brothers, posting the party, the after effect of the party of all the Hennessy bottles and gin and the red cups or whatever. Nah, you weren't sick. You didn't have a cold. You had a hangover, right? You would be surprised. The one thing I can say about social media, for those who are using it in the context that it can be used in effectively and positively, they did well. But the ones that got them fresh J's today, going to Foot Locker, who's playing ball with me at 3 o'clock, blah, 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 blah. Look here, the social media now is no different from television 15, 20 years ago, no different from the Atari 2600. If I have something other to do and I don't want to do work, I won't do work, period, right? One of the things that I think particularly when we start talking about those student development courses, is we had to stress over and over is what does a scholar do consistently? We don't talk about our participants as students, because we say, as soon as you get an ID and a schedule, that makes you a student. But what makes you a scholar? How are you going to be an active participant in the learning process? Those are the things that are important, right? Our scholars were the ones that was putting in that work and putting in that extra time and going to the academic support center and coming to see us for, any questions they may have had, or going to those contact people throughout the campus to get questions answered or whatever. Those are the things that scholars did. And you know what? Scholars didn't have a lot of time for Facebook. Scholars didn't have a lot of time to tweet everything every 16 minutes. I've had a Twitter account. I've posted 28 things in 7 months. We got guys that post things every 15 minutes like they're reporting the weather. Now, that would be great if you work for Channel 8, but it's not doing you any good when you're supposed to be studying for that chemistry exam.
Well, thank you. Yeah. That concludes our workshop. I'd like us to thank Dr. Gardenhire and Mr. Roundtree for an informative and valuable discussion.